quiet breath between. Now this time what we're going to do is breathe through the nose this way, so that you only arrive at a complete breath in time to sing. So it's going to be like this. So you only arrive in time to sing. This completion of the breath. Breathe, sing. Sostenuto tail like this. Nothing has changed. It's not this. Because now I'm going to be totally out of breath. Because I'm taking away the torture. So, breathe, sing. Sometimes this. Same purpose. Always keep the glottis flexible and free. We'll do that. We'll do the whole thing again with this time on the end on sets of duples. And we'll take, and be sure you don't, we could go on, of course, much longer with the phonation, but what I'm interested in is the silence as much as in the sound, and that the release be right on the fourth beat so that we can have breath renewal immediately. So breathe, sing, sing. Pretty much daily as we meet in the morning. Then tomorrow we'll add to them some agility. Okay, I hope you have a good lunch and see you at 2. Do the people who are singing know? Excuse me, people.
Zu Straßburg auf der Schanz, da ging mein Trauen an. Das
First of all, I know this man's voice because he is one of these masochistic types who returns for torture periodically. And I hear a lot of difference in the upper range there. I really do. I mean, I feel like you have things up there that you didn't have. I have that feeling. I also want to mention about some good things here that I see. I see good stance and noble position. And, well, you know, appoggiato there. And in my viewpoint, you have more vibrancy in your voice than you did before. I don't know if you've been thinking about that, but it seems to me that's the case. What I want to mention is both, I think, a technical and a musical suggestion, possibly. And that is, you know, this thing has a certain military characteristic to it, doesn't it? And I think it's so easy then to get a little bit, and there is a percussiveness in it, but I think it's so easy to get, you know, more than you need. I mean, it's a march tempo, but I feel like you could have and that's both technical and a musical thought. And I think it makes a difference for you. Having said that, let me just go ahead and talk about the B section. And it is a high-line tessitura here, beginning with your Brüder al Zumal, that spot. And I thought you did very, very well on that. It's marked pianissimo as well. So I wouldn't want to upset anything, but I wonder if we could get a little more of the first formant in that as well. I mean, in other words, you've got You got the tessitura, you got the control to do it, but I want to be sure it doesn't sound a little bit like marking. You see what I mean? So it still has something in it there. Let's just take the opening line, would you, for a minute? Sorry, did I give you the wrong note? I think I'm okay.
Zu Straßburg aus der Schanz, da ging mein Trauen
I
an.
just want to work enough with that. For example, I thought you have a very nice legato on the da ging mein Trauen an. And even with your the lot of German there, the zu Straßburg auf der Schanz, and you have a little bit more on the 16th note, so it doesn't do this. I think I got the answer. I feel like we're doing too much of going away on the dot, like this. Straßburg auf der Schanz. And I think that's what I'm hearing a bit. Amy, would you? Nice to see you, by the way. Yes. Right there.
Zu Straßburg aus der Schanz, da ging mein Traum an. Das Alton hört ich streben, wo die anstimmen.
Good. Now, can you do that same thing, better legato? Can you do the same thing and not lose your nice stance or your nice posture? Do a little bit of legato there with your torso, right? Right. And by the way, you must keep me on time, you know.
Yep.
Okay. Let's start there. Let's just start again. Just to pick up the calls, right?
Zu Straßburg auf der Schanz, da ging mein Traum
Can I
an.
stop a minute? Is it going well? Good. What I like you to think of is that although this is an octave leap, it's really the same note, isn't it? And this is, the approach is going to come out a little bit perhaps, but there's going to be no feeling of any upward surge with the chest. Great. Now, as you come back down to the middle pitch, because we have no stoppage between, I hear a tiny bit of this, Winston. Turn this thing down a bit, so it is my voice and not somebody else's. Right. And now it's absolutely calm in the body, so that nothing happens except the voice is moving. Very good. The second side again. Okay, I think you do have to do some vowel modification as you just did. However, in opening the mouth, don't drop the zygomatic arch a little bit. If I drop this, this is what I'm going to get. And I lose some of the third formant, okay? Now, I don't blame you. You felt you had to correct after you got this. It was a little too open. I think it was. Now, would you this time think you're going to sing the vowel I? I mean the syllable I up there. The reason for this being that he's going to sing ah, but he has the influence of the oncoming E vowel in the diphthong, which already has a little bit more tendency toward treble, toward the upper partial, while maintaining a rather relatively open mouth position. It has to be open up there because you're in a relatively speech inflection range here. Then mouth has to open there, and then close correspondingly a little for the middle pitch. Good. Okay. Yes. And stay with the last note as well. 6 to the point of release. Yeah. Let's for a minute put the syllable, a nasal in front of, let's say, nyai, 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 with nyai, because that also helps us find a little more of upper partial, and I think it needs that. Right, good. Now, just with the vowel without the consonant, the pilot consonant, and be careful, shoulders don't rise, raise at all. You feel absolutely no chest displacement. Everything's down here. It's really this. It's not really this. It's this. Let's take another vowel, if you would. Let's take the vowel, front vowel as a medium front vowel, as in the word yes, or petto, or me, or whatever. How about yes? Yes. Good. Now we're on to something here. Would you take the yes and go to the ah? So we have yeah. The same ringing sound you have in the egg continues into the ah. The right approach. Now let's put in the passing tones coming down like this. As you bridge through here, you tona di passaggio. What you did is right. The vowel has to close a bit as you descend, but don't make it more lateral because it's got to go this way. So it still has the same upper and lower cautions. Sometimes that's why I do it first. Can you see yourself in profile? First of all, the mirror is the best voice teacher in the world and the least expensive. Right? And I mean that seriously. We have to see what we do as well. And very often, as I mentioned this morning, because the whole instrument, the body is the instrument, it isn't just the larynx, we can really visually see what we are doing many times and become aware of it. You know, she doesn't always, she can dance at times, it's true, but if she always does this, then it's sort of a superficial gesture, I feel. Okay, now just watch yourself a little bit there, okay? See how much you do or do not just a minute, may I? All right, I don't want to make this sway back, but I want to be sure this is up. Would you just for a minute do this to balance yourself? You see, you're not pulled up like this. What I don't want is this. See, I don't want this and up, because then I'm taking away the very basis of this area down here. And now let's just do this for a second. You stand there, and I'm just going to do this for you. Roughly in the same range. Like this. I like to see no motion. Let's change it just a minute. Just once. Just this. Again. And that will be it. Now this time, let's do it on the A vowel then, if you would. Yay. Let's put yay in front of it like this, because that gives us some upper partial in the yot, in the yacht sound. Yay! No motion in the body whatsoever. Right, now we're going to listen to the consistency of timbre between lower middle and just the beginning of upper middle voice. Excuse me just a minute. Now, can you just, that's fine, that's fine. Good. Now, stay with my hand as well. Just stay here, and there's going to be no motion. Look. Yay! Quietude here, quietude of the concept in the head about the timbre. One more time. Good. Yeah, can you stay out? Can we stay out here on the sides? Not so much here. Forget about that. That's your rectus abdominis, which is the least important. We're interested in the transverse abdominis, internal oblique, and external oblique, which are right here. Take your breath again.
Okay,
You
so
feel
I
that?
feel like I'm pushing your hands out.
You don't, no, don't push them out. Just remain. Right. Say to me, How about Notice how you stay here?
Yeah, and I notice I have to press these muscles, squeeze those muscles to keep. Am I doing that?
No, you don't want to squeeze, but you have to develop them. In other words, this is the expiratory gesture. This is the expiratory, this is the expansive gesture. Let me put it another way. This is expansion. This is contraction. You don't want to contract all the time. The idea is not to see how much breath you can squeeze out, but to see how much breath you can retain, you know? And so it's like this. Just let me show this little exercise. Yeah, I'll do it on, we were doing it on A, I believe. None of this. None of this. If I do this and I drink milk, I'm going to get buttermilk or cheese or something. No churning down here from the notes. There's only one onset per phrase. That's the first one. Here's the breath. And there's never any of this. I saw this in the back. And I just want to bring this to your attention because I think this is what you need to do. You don't want to do this. It's not this. It has nothing to do with lifting up of the torso. In fact, it's down into the torso, so to speak. That's perhaps 5 seconds. There should be absolutely no need to pull in for that period of time. Now, would you do that for me? Forget the mirror for a moment. Although I think that's a very good device for you to use. Now, right in here is where you should feel the expansion. Don't pull, no expansion up here. No expansion, no feeling of this. Look, as though you're. That's not a complete breath at all. That's clavicular, and you want to transfer all that into inhalation to down here. And say for me, let's do it on the M hum because it's easier to do perhaps. Staying right here. Oh, but I saw this, go forward. Now see, I go forward. You see what I'm after? Total quietude. The breath is here, not here. The breath has nothing to do with this up here because the expansion is not in the upper chest, it's in the lower part of the cage. You see, if I do this, I want to tell you something. We are all air-breathing animals, and the tendency is always to feel that we have to tank up, that we have to go. And when little children learn how to swim, and I know I've had 5 of them trying it in my household, and what the instructor does is to throw an object in the water, and the child is supposed to be then to gut his or her head under the water. And inevitably, this is what they do. Why? Because, you see, that's our instinct is to tank up, and of course that's what we call the Herring-Broyer syndrome. The more you do that, the more you induce expiration. The more you are this way, the more you are inducing the expiratory gesture. And by the way, one of my one of my sons who became a lawyer, when the instructor threw the disc in the water, he went like this with his foot. That's the legal profession. I really feel this is so basic. It's so basic that I'd rather do this.
Because when I breathe it, automatically do that.
Yes, but they shouldn't. There's no action in the shoulder. See, if I do this, first there will be action in the shoulder, because now I'm using the shoulder girdle as a breath inducement device, and nothing happens here. This has nothing to do with your breath mechanism. Your breath mechanism is here. Now, as time goes on, that could possibly be. You don't want to do this, of course, but believe me, this will not assist. This will induce your asthmatic condition. Like that, because you cannot help but have irritation in the trachea. Here. You need it more down here. Now just a minute. Put your hands on the bottom of the cage for me. Find it there. What I'm after is don't try to hold the ribs out. It's not here. Watch what I'm going to do. It's here. It's there that we're talking about. And now, later this week, or if we have a chance in some of the other technique courses, and we have several people up, I'm going to probably have you lie on the floor or on a table. And you don't do that when you're lying down. You can't do that. It's this action. And if I had, and we forgot to get a table in here that people can sit on, I have to get that. If you were seated, let's come right here for a moment. Let's sit down here for a moment. Don't we make anything in the upper part of the chest. Don't feel anything like this. That is not a complete breath. That is actually, the muscles are not being tensed in the upper chest. And what you want is this.
Okay.
So you have, and it's really quite simple, and you'll discover, I mean, it's not simple right now, but you'll discover as you go ahead that it's going to get simple. If I do this, there's no noise in the breath, there's none of this. Now this is what I feel sometimes happens with you then, is this. You see what I mean? And you mentioned to me of your dance training, and I find this very true of many people who have had a lot of dance training, that there the idea is to elongate the body and to pull in this epigastric area. Pull up, because you're always doing this, you're elongating. In singing, you're not elongating, you're becoming more compact. And I think this is a carryover from your dance training, you know? And so I would like to see you do that feeling. Now, the reason I had you sit is because as you're sitting here, you're not going to have the possibility of doing this. You're going to keep it quiet there. Do you see why we're doing this? It's clear, isn't it? And this is where that action wants to take place. Good. Already you're doing it. Right. See, there's no upper chest movement at all. Yeah, that's good. You're breathing in and out exactly right. Now this time I'm going to count 4 while you inhale and arrive, and this is called Farinelli's exercise. And when you arrive at the 4, just stay like this. Let me show you. You count 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 times for me. First I'll exhale. Go ahead now.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
In that inspiratory position for that middle part, am I not? And let's do that.
So you're mirroring it in
Yes. That's a good way to put it. Absolutely. You are controlling the intake of the breath and the expulsion of the breath by this musculature here. And you can increase that over time. I'm told we're going to stop soon.
Okay.
But this
I'll
is
breathe
more
fast.
important. This is more important than singing karma for us today, right? Excuse me just a minute. I'll be sure that's
Sit forward
like
and
that.
move
And I want you to feel like this is your basis. The torso is seated on the buttocks, like this. And now that musculature we talked about this morning comes up, has its endings here, and also in the lower area of the back, the 12th rib. And when you're like that, you take your breath, just do an onset for me, and any pitch you like, maybe somewhere in there. Right, and don't pull in the front. Don't pull in the front. You don't have to send the breath from here to here because the breath isn't there. The breath is already under your larynx, ready for your usage. It's already in the trachea. So, right, I have to stop. I'm told. Now, hey, right? Good. How about hey? Right. Very good. That's right. And you're getting more.
Push out more.
No. I mean, you may feel that there's expansion, but you don't have to
But it's
push
not.
out.
Okay.
This then moves outward just as it would if you say over a long extended period of time. Put your hands there on yourself. Say and don't pull in. You feel yourself remaining pretty well or not? Yeah. And that's the same way. There's no movement of this. One more time. Righto. Now come out with your vowel. Don't pull in. It's a very nice quality of sound. It's not thin.
Much better, John.
It's thin the other way. The other thing I want to say to you is something that, and you'll hear me say this 100 times probably this week, it's a very word. Alfredo Kraus once in Fiesm. And he said, you know, one thing that I had to, the hardest thing for me to learn was not to let the drama rob me of my voice. Okay? In other words, if you're doing all of this, you're allowing the drama somehow to rob you of your vocal instrument. You won't have to do that. You can be just as dramatic and as interpretively alive in the presence vocal if you don't do something which physically negates the the coordination of the body is what I meant. More down here perhaps. The next thing is the silent breath renewal that I think you will do just by being reminded to do it. And when you come to things like this, all those breaths can be very silent. And because if there is a noisy breath, it means the breath is not been as quickly as it might be. Now, the other thing I want to say, let me find here, let me find the music where I have this. I had a teacher that I think said something very good to me a long time ago that I'm reminded of right now. And he said, don't be in a military posture, because if you're a private, you have to be like this, with the chest up, you have to sit like this. If you're an officer, you wear those nice striped pants with the thumb here, the chest is full, and you say that, you know. You don't have to go that, right? So it's sort of that wonderful, noble position that you can achieve there. Okay. Just a tiny bit low in pitch right now. Sounds close to that, right? Awesome. For a moment. Because I feel it's good, but I think you can have a little less weight in it. Okay. How about the Notre Dame? Okay. Notre Dame. Did you like the la part of it? Yeah. I think it's better. Now don't sing the la this time, but think the same ah. I thought it was a little less coperto, a little less cupo there, and a little bit better. Now that's a matter of taste, a matter of judgment. I mean, I just think it matches better. Now, the other thing I want to say, and I know we have such a limited amount of time, could I hear the nid d'ombrage? And here's the other thing. This is all this tender stuff, you know, with the what is it? Pas de fleurs écloses, and you have all that. Then you have this. Pas de fleurs écloses. Point de gris soleil. I want to try the same thing with you this time. I want you to sing nid d'ombrage as a vocalist. Of course, it's not. Nid d'ombrage. What I'm after is I hear a tiny little bit of something ingolato there. A little bit of don la gauche, huh? A little bit of Nino Bra. I'm trying to get away from that. Nino Bra. And sometimes, let's try to do this for me. Ya, 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 ya. Ya, 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 ya. Nino Bra. Nino Bra. Maybe a little more freedom in it, and don't drop the sigmatic arch at all. Mi do That sounds to me like a more matching sound with the rest. That's it. Quiet breath between. Now this time what we're going to do is breathe through the nose this way, so that you only arrive at a complete breath in time to sing. So it's going to be like this. Did you like the la part of it? Yeah. I think it's better. Now don't sing the la this time, but think the same ah. I thought it was a little less coperto, a little less cupo there, and a little bit better. Now that's a matter of taste, a matter of judgment. I mean, I just think it matches better. Now, the other thing I want to say, and I know we have such a limited amount of time, could I hear the nid d'ombrage? And here's the other thing. This is all this tender stuff, you know, with the what is it? Pas de fleurs écloses, and you have all that. Then you have this. Pas de fleurs écloses. Point de gris soleil. I want to try the same thing with you this time. I want you to stop.
Mi
Okay,
dobra.
no, what I'm after is I hear a tiny little bit of something ingolato there. A little bit of don la gauche, huh? A little bit of mi dobra. I'm trying to get away from that. Mi dobra. And sometimes, let's try to do this for me. Ya, 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 ya.
Ja, 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 ja.
Mi dobra.
Mi dobra.
I think maybe a little more freedom in it, and don't drop the zygomatic arch at all. But mi dobra.
Mi dobra.
That sounds to me like a more matching sound with the rest. Could you anticipate the S sound a little bit in advance so you have this? So you come in with the vowel synchronized on the pitch rather than this. So the L rise right on the pitch, and let's do that. And just a little tiny bit more motion. You give her a little bit more support if you like, because it's a sizable instrument. Okay, right there again. Say this for me. It's nice singing, but would you say for me, la mia preghiera ai santi? Say it once. It's la mia preghiera, right? La mia preghiera.
La mia preghiera.
Right. And what I'm after is, if you notice, Deborah, your mouth is about like this when you speak it. La mia preghiera, and I'm going to sing la mia preghiera. It's not this la mia preghiera. It's not necessary to have all that motion. More as you would speak it, with intensity. I liked your symphony very much. Could we start that bar again, leading in? And quieter in the body, the phrase is going this way. Some nice things. I would not do this. I would have the constant presence of that sound. The altar. And what I wrote here was on that, don't decrescendo too soon. You see, the tar, look here. You're crescendoing here, which is the very climactic point. This is where you're going to arrive. And that's where you are at your loudest sounds on that, and then gradually, after about this 1.5 beats, it begins to decrescendo. You're kind of beginning a decrescendo here, when this is such a wonderful, expansive, and sensuous phrase, isn't it, huh? And how about there now? Right on the di fiori all'altar. Maybe the decrescendo comes only at the very end. Still with your voice. Don't take away the center of your tone. Nello. Just say for me, agli astri a cielo. Agli astri a cielo, right there. Yeah, and now sing it. Right. perfect. How about humming once? Mi, mi. The same center to the sound now with the text. Right there, Edi. It's a little too loud. Take your mirror once in hand. Now I'll tell you what, Deborah, I'm all for having this up. I'm all for not having, for having a look on the face where there's a raised here. But even here, you can't really smile on it. You know, it's not signor, it's signor. So, very nice, however. Can we start with I liked so much what you did on this area we just talked about, the aliastiatiel business. And now let's take the Nell'ora del dolore at that point. Say, Signor, Signor, sort of what you want. That's the mouth shape. Now keep your energy. Signor. This is what happens here. About like this, and you're pretty good on all of that, I think. Like this. Signor, and don't push because I have to come out. Signor. More expansion out there, and listen, you have a right to be more courageous. You have a right to be more pleased with what you're doing. Don't undersell yourself. Can we start that right again now? We'll go back, because I think we're on the route to what we want. Nell'ora del dolore. That spot, okay? Right there. Business on the single note passage, for example, destroy your timbre. And then I said up here earlier, first of all, I think it's a lovely voice. It's a very good voice. Isn't that nice to hear? But what I said is that when you go, you have this lovely timbre, then when you go straight, you destroy your beautiful timbre. And sometimes you do that rather climactic moments. And I just wish you didn't, because it's too nice otherwise. Can we start? And I'll play some wrong notes here, but I can see, the reason I sit here is I can see it better, and then I don't have to jump up and down. Now, before you begin, first of all, I wish it were really an Italian E there, because remember there's no I in the Italian language. It doesn't exist, so it's it's an E. The other thing is, I know there are people who teach that the mute syllable is trina morbida, but it's not. That's what Ricci used to call la lingua della strada. He also called it Giulio the Italian.
Street talk. Street
So
talk.
we want in quelle trine morbide, not morbida, get them a little bit higher if you could. Can we start right around it? Nice. Now, I'd like you to do almost with a sense of portamento. In quelle trine morbide, just sumptuous sound pouring through. The other thing I wrote is that I feel like you make your consonants in Italian too heavy, not talking about the doubles, but that you somehow stop before the consonant, something like this. In quelle trine morbide, instead of in quelle trine morbide. See what I'm after? Okay, right again. Portamento. Forget it, it's too much. All I wanted to do was have one note run together. And you're really doing more portamento than I really meant, okay? Want to start again? You see, all I know the word is morbide, but if you sing this, vowel sound coming through for a while. Good, now that's fine. Now, as you notice, there's a phrase shape that follows the harmony. We're going to have a whole registration day on female registration. But one of the big problems is if you have any problem down there of arriving into mixtures or what is called chest, head mixture, head, chest mixture, one sure thing you don't want to do is go straight, because that takes away the whole aspect of the transition, and then we get a different sound. Now, on the, I wish the silenzio could be more of an air vowel, really not silenzio, but un silenzio freddo che m'abbia. Can we take the silence again? foreign card, and this doesn't count. This counts every once in a while. Okay. Ya, slowly. You're doing very well. Ya, ya.
Bravo. Bravo.
Well, let's just do the vowels like this, guys. How about oh? Just the vowel sounds. It's a little low, a little higher. Right? Say nya, nya, nya. Yeah, nya, nya, nya from over the chin. Nya, nya, nya. Fa. Good.
So,
Fine. Now, very nice. Now on the al, let the L not come until just before the M. And it's an A vowel, isn't it? It's not A, but it's A, mi, o, duolo. And it's duo, o, on the duolo. Okay, Nice. Now, when you have this little melisma here, these were lovely sounds. Let me back here. The ah, the mio. Now, don't assist the vibrato anyway like this. Ah, mio, ah. Don't shake it. It's the same timbre, so there's no change in your timbre. It was very lovely. The ah, mio again. Right, it's saying the agnè sospir. Agnè sospir. Agnè sospir. Sospir. These are the same vowels. Sospir, right? Your alveo is lovely, really. I like it. Right there. Same thing. Lovely, couldn't be any better for you. Now, on the mi, be sure you really get from the front. The O is a back vowel, the mi is a front vowel. But we have O, mi, re. We have E, O, A, O, right? I want to hear every one of those vowels. Yeah? Okay, very nice. O. Not stop between the O and the mi. Don't say, oh, mi, but oh, mi, re. You know, after the one sound. Now, Amperti has another wonderful thing that he said. There's a common quality of vibration between them. You know? He also said one note ignites the next note. And so it's oh, mi, you know, that feeling. And then re, mi, o, re, so. So we give the O again. Right, may be another problem, because it isn't quite as steady as you would like it to be there. And I want you to feel like you're going to sing to the point of release as though there were another note after it. We won't sing it, but as though it were sing to the point of release. Next thing is that this is going to just feel a little more involved there, if you come up that scale. A little more energy there, huh? Back to your Omi Lasa. We do that by that time on the plan. Probably about 8 more minutes. How many? 8? Great. Great. I'm having a good time. Are you? Yeah, we'll start with the Omi Lasha again. So we've had this 4 minutes. Omi La. About the D is where it's going to open a little bit more for you. Omi. Omi La. Yeah, say La, La, La. Yeah. La, La, La. Say Ba, Ba, Ba. Say Be, Ba, Be, Ba, Be. Remember, opening the mouth doesn't open the throat, right? At all. So, not the mouth will open as you go up because you're leaving the speech inflection range. Morir, morir. Vowel integrity, morir. Yeah, say ya ya. Say tamo tanto. Tamo tanto. Tamo tanto. Tamo. Do that for me. Really loud about tamo. I still hear the L creeping in like this. So every note was vibrant, wasn't it? Every single note was vibrant. Now let's put it in a line with the same vibrancy. So now what I'd like to do is the inherent vowels in it, which are see if we can keep no consonants yet. And you start again. Now, this time, would you concentrate? See, you really can stay without a shake here if you are if you connect with among these muscles here. And so you have this. Of course, it's easy for a male to do that falsetto, but it's not for you. Stays out, right? As much as you can. Let's go back and do the. Just the okay, right from that, and a little more toward the A vowel, not so much the o, right there. You all right? Okay. Say one time, would you do this for me? Yeah. A little higher vowel. Right. Now, would you let this come up a little tiny bit? Yeah. Right. And now. Okay. And on. Because the voice is the body. Notice have elevation of the sternum. You drop, the shoulders are back, but not in military fashion. You're in a very noble position. You're very balanced. You stand there, do this, keep yourself right on balance. The ears are lined up with the spine. The back of the neck is long, the front of the neck is short, not the reverse, not this. As soon as we do this, of course, the sternum tends to fall, and this tends to go up. We want to keep ourselves in a very good axial position at all times. Let's do a little windmilling, shall we? Watch out for the legs next to you. Throw those arms away. Those hands get us in trouble much of the time anyway. So throw them away. Try to keep the torso straight. Try to keep torso straight so that you don't move that part of your body. You should feel it in the waist area and in the shoulder girdle area. And if you can, keep the head straight on and just throw things away. Begin to feel a certain amount of adrenaline flowing, right? Now we're going to fly like very large birds. You pick the bird of your choice. And flying with the sternum leading us. And then reverse the arms, if you like. And then again back in several directions. You should begin to feel it in the back of the neck. I do. Do you? Yeah. Right. And then drop the arms and throw them away. Just throw them away. And then let's do right away our neck exercise, which consists of development of the sternocleidomastoidal area there, of the muscular action. And maybe 10 times, maybe more times, however you wish. Keep moving it. And then after a period of time, of course you have a disc problem, you don't do this. And then you roll the head around the shoulder. You may hear some crickle-crackle in several ways, and then shake the jaws, if you like a dog with a big bone. Okay, very good, very good. Okay, now let's chop a little wood. And on this, we want the pelvis as far forward as possible, the back wood. And then down and let everything hang. As I say, if you have hair, let it hang. I've been trying to see if this would help in any way to develop hair. So, a number of times. Right. And let's dance a little bit in place. We feel very narrow hips and broad shoulders, you know? People always laugh when I say that. I don't know why. So, getting very, just a nice, wrists are loose, ankles are loose. Very, very happy feeling, like a little mannequin on a board that you have when you were a child. Good. All right. Why don't we, we've flown, we've windmilled, we chopped wood. Why don't we now raise the hands again like this. Come down and find the bottom of the rib cage. Remember, females, that's going to be very low in your body. Most females have very little space between the crest of the iliac, the hip bone, and the bottom of the cage. Also, tall men, usually bass baritones, have less space than do shorter, more handsome people. And so the area we're interested in is right here. Okay, and now we're going to do this. Notice how you stay. If you pull in, it's because you've been taught to pull in. If you go, that's because you have a reflex action of what you've been taught. And actually, if you don't, if you just stay and bounce like this, you stay in that inspiratory position. And then, slightly differently like this. I want to face this way. No, the other way. Right. Thank you. So I can repeat. That's great. Thank you. So. sing to the point of release. This is what often happens when I hear an exercise like this from students. They'll go, hey, 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 hey. And everything's beginning to collapse. The whole idea is that we stay through the phonation to the point of release, and then we do the breath still in pretty much the inspiratory position. Naturally, if you're going to sing a long phrase, this is going to move in eventually, of course. But what we want to do is to retard that general tendency toward the collapse of the cage, which happens when we speak. It shouldn't happen when we sing. Here we go. It's very important that we breathe between each one, and silently, what's happening is this, of course. Etc. We go on forever. As you notice, we're using the aspirated onset, as we talked about yesterday, because then we have some slight airflow before the closure of the glottis. Okay, do this now. Let's do 2 bars, and we're still in the same inspiratory position. So we're going to have 2 bars of that and the long note on the end. Here we go. Note of that triplet figure. But what's actually happening is the glottis is free to part independent of inspiration. You realize when we do this, glottis is parting, breath is first coming in, a synergistic action between the opening of the vocal folds and the action in the abdominal wall. Now when we do, and the both the same, the triplets, we're going to have the breath only after the 3rd beat, like after the 3rd note, like this. I'm only renewing the breath after the 3rd note, but I have the freedom to let go of the glottis, is the idea. Let's do that here on, we'll do turn the vowels around this time. Hey, 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 ha, ha, ha. Hey, 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 ha, ha, ha. Hey, 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 ha, ha, ha. And now we're going to do quadruplets the same way. It's like formal warning, right? Because I'm still in the inspiratory position with this articulation happening down here, with a tiny little bit of bounce. And it's not so far removed from suppressed laughter, is it? When you were a bad child, you went, that feeling? Or when you pant, a noisy pant, a silent pant, it's very similar. I mentioned prephonatory tuning. I told you this was a phrase that was developed very much by Barry White, who was president of the London College of Surgeons. And the idea is this, that when a well-trained singer thinks of targeting the pitch immediately, there is hardly any time. It's something like 1/500th of a second preparation. Whereas people who are less skillful do ah, hey, ah, etc., because they haven't the freedom to let go of the glottis. So what we're really doing is a wonderful example of precision between airflow and vocal fold onset. Now this time we're going to take the one where we pace the breath. I want you to breathe through the nose like this. And only arrive in time to sing with this completion of the breath. It's just what we did yesterday with the Farinelli, with someone here where we counted 1, 2, 3, 4 while they inhaled, and then while they sustained. It's the same process. So breathe, sing, sing, sing. Right, and try to get off right away on the 4th beat so that we could be breathing over those next 3 beats. So now this time we're going to take it. We're going to do 2 bars like this of breath. Breathe, breathe, sing. Breathe, breathe. see what I'm saying. You can use these as mosaics, building them in one way or another. Now this time, we're going to add the short sostenuto on this, like this. Breathe. The onset very clean on the end. Here we go, breathe. Sing. Sing. This time you put duples on the end like this. Breathe. Sing. Sing. We put triplets on the ends. We have this phase and sing. Now we want to do our onset chorally. We want to do this. So basses and mezzos and tenors take an inner part, sopranos stay on top, or tenors on top as well. And we'll do it about 60, metronomic 60, so we have here we go, on up. Okay, let's actually think of it as a choral sound for a moment. If we have less soprano on top and more bass on the bottom, and the inner two parts equally voiced. Let's try that. It's hard to do because we are in a large group here, but let's think of it in those terms. See if you can hear the harmonic structure beneath you. One more time. Everything that we're doing here can be used with choral groups as well as a warm-up process. And now we're going to turn this morning to a little bit of agility. And the agility comes right out of the onset. We've been doing onset, and now the agility factor is going to be like this. We're going to do If you notice, the legato agility is the same as the articulated agility. It's the same motion, only legato. So we have here we go. Staccato, we really want let's do it on ha this time. Articulated legato like this. And every note must be very clean. Here we go. Now we'll move to 3. We'll do onset, you do the singles, then you do a few weeks later, you add the duples, and then the triplets, and then later the quadruplets, and then the sostenuto phrase with it. And now these we would not do this all at once, but we will do to illustrate the exercises themselves. So, never pulling in, always remaining. It's not never that. Okay, here we go. So if you sing, and I will shake, isn't it? Instead of, and I will shake, none of that. Or, now let's do, did we do the 5 yet? We did not. I was interested in the silence as in the sound. The 9-note scale, first on the 5-note scale on E, then over the longer period of time on the A, and then on the 9th scale down on the A like this. E, A, A, E, A, A. It's hard to do in a group, but this is what we're going to try it. Anyway, here we go. We began with this in the agility factor. I'm going to put that on the top like this. One avoid, of course, is this. There we go. A-E, so the E is on the top this time. A-E. Now there's one more nasty little one we like to do because it changes direction and people are not prepared for that. Changes direction just as Mozart, Handel, Haydn, other composers, Rossini often do. So it's this. So we'll come down like this. And we had some breath pacing, that is with the one where we breathe slowly and then sing with the sostenuto. We had our start with the staccato articulation, and then legato articulation, in which, as we say, we go from the slower patterns to the longer patterns. And then I want to talk just a moment about the onset agility pairing, and because I feel that as soon as we have done some work with breath management, we should move in the studio to agility factor, because no matter what your breath management may be, people will tend to fixate. They'll tend to try to stay. And therefore, the two poles, of course, of bel canto are really the ability to move the voice and the ability to sustain the voice. You think of all the arias from 19th century, 18th and 19th century arias that are we often see that we have a cavatina and a cavaletta. I mean, think of Alphonse Saint Louis and Sempre Libera, whatever, all the same building. So that the voice has to be able to be moved and to be sustained. That's why we want to right away try to combine onset and agility, and then agility and sostenuto, as we did this morning. The other things I want to mention is that we are going to be dealing with the consonants as pilot consonants in general a little later in this course, but I want to mention that there are some consonants which introduce an awareness of the appoggio position. And one is certainly the that's why we use it. If you say unless you are taught to do it, you won't go you'll stay here and say And so the M is very useful both as a resonator adjuster and as a constant for making us aware of the appoggio position. Let's do for a minute. Ma, ma, ma. Equal values, not just ma, 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 but ma, ma, ma. Place your hands here below the K. Sit tall. Notice how you tend to stay. Ma, ma, ma. Of the other nasals as well. But then let's move to the K sound. When you say K or G, of course you have closure back here between the velum and the tongue. You have a stopping of airflow, and then comes immediately the vowel K, K, K. But put your hands here while you do it. K, K, K. Supposing you were to say, for example, in a very familiar baritone aria, Bella siccome. When you say siccome, you're stopping the sound. Or die Brücke in German. Or if you want to say in English, I have a sick cat. Say it once.
I have a sick cat.
And what you're really doing is stopping the sound by the closure back there, aren't you? You can also say, I have a big goat.
I have a big goat.
Right. And what we want to do, sometimes these stoppage sounds, these plosives and fricatives and stop consonants, get people in trouble. But in the singing voice, they can be very, very useful because we have the sense of contact here, a sense of closure, and immediately the vowel as a result. Another point is this. If you have a student who's very, very breathy, and when you do the onset, they want to go, hey, 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 use the K sound. K, K, because it stops the airflow, and then you have the immediate emergence of the sound. So that's a very useful consonant for that. G the same way. The R is very interesting because it gives us an awareness of contact here too. Children always love to make motor noises like do it once and put your hands here and see how you stay. So you really remain. And so sometimes staying in the same position for the vowel as for the tongue point trill, which is the R. Since I have it written here, appoggiare, of course, means to be in contact with or to lean against, and what we have then is this contact in the inner and outer musculature of the lower abdominal wall. If you put your hands together, sometimes helpful for students, put your hands together like this, and notice how one hand is in contact with the other. You feel the warmth of the hand, but you're not pushing in, you're not pushing out, you are in contact. And that's the way this feels. Inner outer muscle is in contact. It isn't that you're pushing, it isn't that you're pulling or holding, but you're in contact. And now I want to mention with regard to that the so-called Farinelli vocalese. There is no real historical proof that Porpora wrote a page of exercises and gave them to Farinelli and all of that. But there is a historic, an oral tradition at least, that Farinelli, who was known, as you know, the silent breather, practiced this silent exercise 2 hours a day. I wouldn't advise it. There are too many other things to do. But the idea being this, that if someone counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and slowly inhales for that period, then stays for 4, and then exhales for 4. Mark, would you count for me? And notice what I'm going to do. All right, first you have to exhale. Go ahead.
1, 2, 3, 4. Remain. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Etc. I mean, he knows that we often go to 10.
Right.
So, and the idea being that you're not holding your breath, but you're simply suspending this process. And in the process, you're also developing the internal oblique, external oblique, and the transverse abdominis. You're developing their ability to remain in contact with each other, which is what the appoggio is. And we may be using that exercise some later in here. Now, just to review what we did yesterday, what is the musculature of the appoggio? Well, it has to do, of course, first of all, with the chest wall itself. Starting even above that, we'll take it even higher with the back of the neck. The sternocleidomastoids, of course, have their origin at the mastoid here, as we mentioned yesterday, as do the scaleni, and as do we have here also muscles called the calcatus muscles that are attached back here and come to your spine. You have they attached to the cervical vertebra and to the thoracic vertebra down to the fifth. And so when we do this, we're already in a structural position for the appoggio to work. If we do this, it can't. If we do this, it can't. If we do this, it can't. This is not relaxation. This is simply dropping everything so that there's no contact with the supportive musculature of the appoggio. Of course, the muscles of the abdominal walls we mentioned are the transverse abdominis, the internal oblique, the external oblique, and the rectus abdominis. And it's these three which are largely important because they have their origins in the pelvic region and their insertions in the rib cage up to the fifth rib, which is where your nipple is. And then into the back, into the lower ribs of the back, the 11th and 12th ribs. And what we talked about is muscular antagonism among them. Now, this drawing by Picasso is to illustrate that musculature, it's not what we do here, what we do here, and here, and here. And I feel a lot of voice pedagogy concentrates on that. What you do here, what you do here, what you do here. It's this that counts. And that's the musculature which keeps remember, the diaphragm has no proprioceptive responses. You can't control it locally, nor can you control locally your intercostal muscles. But they are influenced, their action is influenced by the surrounding musculature, which can retard the ascent of the diaphragm. Now we're going to talk about some supraglottic factors of the vocal instrument this morning, and we're going to look at some slides to do that. We're going to talk about what the actual resonance possibilities are of the voice, and then that will tie in very nicely with the session that's going to take place tonight with Dr. Ticci and Dr. Hinkley. And so, what we want to mention is that this is a fancy word, buccopharyngeal. Why use such a fancy word? Well, because instead of always saying the combination of the mouth and the pharynx and so forth, we just say buccopharyngeal. Bucco from the same word as bocca in the throat, because the throat can mean a whole lot of things. And the pharynx is the back of the throat wall. So what we're going to talk about this morning is the relationship among lips, jaw, tongue, zygomatic arch, velum, and laryngeal position. And those are the parts that change constantly in the vocal tract, as in, say, the horn or something. We have the constant mobility, which is what the wonder of speech is. And there's no other animal who can do that except the human person can do it. And that depends upon what we do with lips, where the position of the lips are, what the jaw is doing, what the tongue is doing, and often overlooked what the zygomatic arch is doing, and then the velum, and of course the velum is the soft palate, isn't it, that area. And what we will be stressing very much here is that when this is raised and we inhale this way, if you look in, you'll discover that there's already some elevation in the soft palate area, which is not there when you drop it. And the position of the velum is one of those watersheds in vocal pedagogy. There are people who are trying all the time to hold the velum up while singing, trying to make a dome and all that sort of thing. We want to examine as to whether that truly is possible. You'll also see some film material tonight of the action in the oropharynx and the laryngopharynx area, as well as the nasopharynx, I believe. All right, now let's turn right now to our slides. Again, of course, everybody in the world knows there's a lot of space between the vocal folds, kind of like the hole in the donut. It's only if you push the sides of the donut in, the hole disappears. Well, the vocal folds come together, and of course, that's adduction, and when they part, that's abduction. of it as adding and taking away. And so supraglottic considerations, we want to talk about everything above the glottis we call supraglottic, just easier than saying those things which lie above the glottis, and then subglottic, of course, are those things which lodge below the glottis. This, Omar, could you get my pointer up for me and change the battery so you have to turn right around now? Yep. Okay, the vocal tract itself. And we'll have our pointer in a minute here. But, of course, starting here, we have the external lips, the lip bastion, we like to call that, because it does indeed stop the sound. And then, of course, the tongue in its neutral position is in contact with the inner surface of the lower front teeth. The tongue is composed of 17 muscles, 8 paired muscles, and 1 single muscle. It's the only muscle group in both genders which is attached at one end and free to move at the other. The tongue can get us in an awful lot of problems. As a matter of fact, I think most of us as teachers of singing will agree that, thank you, sir, that the three most common areas of tension in the singing voice are either tongue, jaw, or neck, very frequently. And so the tongue is indeed occupies so much of the vocal tract. What do we mean by the vocal tract? Well, of course, everything from the lip bastion down to the larynx itself. And then all of this is our vocal tract. Interestingly enough, it's one chamber. It's the buccopharyngeal chamber. And actually, although we have the larynx also serves as a resonator, we have no other possibilities except when it is conjoined with the nasal cavity on the nasal consonants or the French or Portuguese nasal vowels. I am adding Portuguese because I was really not aware of the extent to which Portuguese singers really have to fight continuing nasality in their sound until last week when I did a course there in Lisbon. And it's one of the things that's, just as with the French singer, you have to be very careful that the nasality does not then continue into the non-nasals. Of course, in this area, if you turn on your TV, you're going to hear the weather person say, well, today in Cleveland, Ohio, it's going to rain, and it's very, very, don't you think so, George? Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's this terrible nasality. That's one of the awful things about this district. It's, sometimes I'm almost happy we don't have very many students from this area. Someone boo. Okay. Here's the palate. Of course, the hard palate is 2/3 about of the palate. And then the soft palate, of course, is that which is mobile and which then terminates in the uvula, right here. And so this is the velar area here. Okay, that's enough of that, I believe. We'll move to another one. This is Rebecca Fromhertz in the shower.
Oh, yeah.
Very good dental work with Rebecca. Now, as you look in, of course, this is what you see when you look back in the mouth. You see the oropharynx here. Above it is the nasopharynx, and down below is the laryngopharynx. And we have tonsils that are lodged in this area. These two large muscles, of course, the palatopharyngeal and the palatoglossal muscle, come down and attach to the pharynx and to the tongue. What we do with this area affects directly the position of the larynx. The action of the larynx, I mean to say. You cannot move, if you move your tongue around, you're going to move the laryngeal position because, of course, the tongue is attached to the hyoid bone, which you don't see down here, which is there, and therefore, and then the larynx is suspended from the hyoid bone. We'll see that later. And so anything that we do with this area also is one unit, so to speak. We have to be very careful what we do with our buccal postures, our mouth postures, and our jaw, etc., because that will also have a direct effect on what happens laryngally. This happy fellow shows us here the submandibular musculature. The jaw is the mandible. That's another word for it. And you can see that it's attached to the hyoid bone, which is this oxbow-shaped bone right here, from which then the larynx is suspended by the hyothyroid membrane. This, of course, is the thyroid cartilage, and then down here, peeking up here, is the cricoid, and in between them are the pitch-changing musculatures that we'll talk about later. You notice there are certain muscles which come from this area and go upward toward the temporomandibular joint. And there are certain muscles which raise the larynx and certain muscles which lower the larynx. Laryngeal elevators and laryngeal depressors. We'll talk about those also when we get a little further into the design of the whole machine. Back of the pharyngeal wall, of course, we have three constrictor muscles here. You have the superior constrictor, the middle one, and the lower one, which then, of course, is involved also in the swallowing process. This guy is showing us some of the external musculature of the face. This is the orbis auricularis here, which runs around your lips. This is the big platysma muscle, and anytime people do operations on the larynx, they have to cut that, and sew it down to a piece of cloth or whatever, and then they can go into the internal part of the structure of the larynx. However, the platysma is also called the grimacing muscle, and singers get into trouble because they do grimace, and that is the word, not grimace, but grimace. So they do this, and you know, pulling downward on the lower portion of the muscles around the jaw and the neck. Here we have these zygomatic muscles that I mentioned before. And they are muscles which then elevate, of course, the mouth in a certain way and also lift the whole fascia area here. We have also something called the risorius, and that's the smiling muscle, that one right there. And that's when we smile, that is being activated. But when we breathe this way and lift, and yesterday with a soprano here toward the end of the day, I suggested that she have ah and not have ah, because then the risorius is being made to spread, which will bring too much brightness to the sound. And so that's part of why we're interested in how these things work. The same thing here again, you can see it perhaps better. Here's the orbicularis oris here, and the levator. Those of us who are singers, we always want to call them levator because we're used to Latin, but it's really called levators. And these are the levator muscles which then raise the angles of the mouth. We have the risorius muscle, the buccinator, and what am I missing here? The masseter. Those are our chewing muscles. I want to show you this because it's very important what we do here as to what happens back here, as you'll see in a moment. Actually, we have the buccopharyngeal resonator tract, and everything we do with the lips, everything we do with the zygomatic arch, everything we do with the jaw posture, everything with the velum, and then eventually the position of the larynx itself affects that vocal tract. Oh, I thought I had another picture, Judge. Suppose they will come across at the moment. Same things here showing you much of the same material. We won't have to deal along with that. Again, just to give you an idea of some of the structure that goes on, even from the mastoid area and the front of the face. All right, I haven't found my other picture. We'll come up later, perhaps. These are common tongue postures we see in the studio. This should be, this of course is another Picasso picture you can see here. This is not exactly drawn to scale. So the tongue is in contact with the inner surface of the lower front teeth. When you say and when you think aloud in any language, you say yeah, oui, si, da, whatever. The tongue is in that neutral position. And when you are sitting there now in a relaxed situation, your tongue is most probably in contact with the inner surface of the lower front teeth. That's the acoustic at rest place for the tongue. That's the home base position. Very often in the voice studio, we see this happen. The tongue will be put down below the roots of the teeth because the jaw is dropped so far. It's like being at the dentist. You don't know what to do with your tongue. When the dentist says, "Oh, you're right," you go, it's a non-phonatory position. Very often singers will go, and of course if you put the tongue down there, the body of the tongue then is going to elevate. If these are your teeth, and you put it down here, the body of the tongue will elevate, and you'll change the whole shape of the resonator tract. That is a common, and we're going to talk about some cures for that, with the use of certain kinds of consonants which place the tongue in contact with the inner surface of the lower front teeth. Another one which is very common, and you'll have to forgive me if I step on any toes, but there are certain Germanic techniques of singing where the tongue is actually pulled up in the middle of the mouth to make two resonator systems. In other words, that. You elevate the tongue up like this. The idea being that if you have a double chamber, that ought to be better than a single chamber. So you're saying, and it also pushes downward on the larynx, so that you have a longer laryngeal tube, which therefore increases, just as with an organ pipe, more of the lower sounds. You increase the lower part of the spectrum at the expense of the upper. And this is not to be advised. Down here is another position which is sometimes advocated. It was advocated by a very prominent American teacher who was recently retired and not a moment too soon. And that was to keep the mouth in the E position with the tongue in contact with the upper molars all the time. E, because that would bring a resonance that would carry you over the arch. Of course, what it does, you're in the E position, so of course you're augmenting the upper partials in the 3,000, 4,000 hertz area. 3,000 for the male, 4,000 for the female. But on the other hand, it distorts everything else. A very common one is this, in the retroflex tongue position, such as we do in English when we say, our Father, Father, you see it all the time. The tongue pulled back, and that is another, of course, error that we'll be talking about. So as I mentioned earlier, the tongue, of course, is the chief vector in a certain way of the vocal tract, and what we do with the tongue then influences not only the shape of the resonator tract, but even the position of the larynx. This is a baritone. Retroflex tongue position. And it's very clear that he's singing Di Provenza, and he's got mio desa, mio di mio ben. See the terror in the eye.
I thought it was Nessun Dorma.
Could be. All right. Jaw postures. First of all, what we have to say is that opening the mouth has nothing to do with opening the throat. I can close my mouth like this, and take the fiber optic and look and breathe through my nose like this. And the pharynx is in an extended position as far as it's going to go. And opening the mouth does not have anything to do with opening the throat. As a matter of fact, the more you open the mouth, the more you reduce the space of the pharynx. And we'll talk about that a little later. There's more space in the pharynx on the E vowel than on any other vowel. That doesn't mean you stay in the E position, but let's just know that that's the case. Dropping the jaw does not open the throat. However, there are people who want you to be in the hung jaw position all the time. That sort of idiot jaw, it's supposed to be relaxed. No, that's not a relaxed jaw, that's a hung jaw. As you're sitting there right now, your jaws are not in tension. They're in a relaxed state, unless you have some orthodontic problem or some other pathology is the problem. And so to talk about hanging the jaw in order to make space, you don't make space. It's not the absolute dimension of either resonator, the mouth or the pharynx, which is important, but the manner by which they are conjoined. I want to say that again. It should be an acoustic rule. It's not the absolute dimension of either the mouth or the pharynx that is important, but the way in which they're conjoined. And they're conjoined differently on each vowel. We have E, I, E, O, U. There's not one position of the mouth in singing. There's no one ideal position for the mouth in singing or the jaw. That position is determined by the vowel, the tessitura, and the intensity. That's something we should keep in mind all the time. I started off in the first day telling you about the person who has put the corks in the mouth, keep the jaw open, the person who put the pencil in the mouth, keep the smile position. Those are all fixated positions, phonetic positions, which do not correspond to the mobility of the vocal tract in speech or in singing. I mean, this is already a noun position. This is a dropped jaw position, of which is a regurgitory position. Let's talk about that a moment. When is the jaw in this position? Well, if you are a snorer, or if your roommate is a snorer, or your bedmate is a snorer, you hear. Why? Because the jaw is dropped, and that means that there'll be a drunkard. He says, well, how are you? That's because of that. If you have, for example, a regurgitation, when you go like that, why do you have that shape of the jaw? Because you're bringing the bolus back up the esophagus, and so therefore the throat is closed. I mean, this does not open the throat. There's less space in my throat there by far than if I'm like this. And so, does that mean you never open your mouth? No, of course not. You open the mouth for ascending pitch, and you open your mouth in correspondence to the vowel sequence. When you say ah, the mouth is exposed open on ah. It's more lateral position on the other vowels. And then on the rounded vowels, ah, o, is another shape. Of course, as you go up to what we're going to talk about is integrity, vowel integrity, as you ascend the scale, while modifying the vowel. We'll get to that later. This is not a desirable position. This soubrette he has a nice zigzag arch here. Tongue is in a fairly good position, I believe, and she must be singing Mozart. Buccal region again. All right, just to review, the buccal pharyngeal tract itself here, the tongue at this point occupying much of the tract, the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity is conjoined in the singing voice only on the nasals. Otherwise, there is velar-pharyngeal port closure. This is your velar-pharyngeal port here, and it should be closed. And we even check to see that it is when we sing vowels. We sing to see the nose sound comes through the nose because it's not desirable. Singers often talk about nasal resonance when they're talking about bone conduction, vibration in the upper parts of the structure. And there's no doubt we feel that. We sing by sensation, a great deal of it in the head area, but there's not really resonance as such in that part. This will show you how a blue nose. I want to show you actually that these sinuses are not participators. The sinuses do not participate. If they do, it is so minimal that it's hardly recognizable. The sinuses can be even stuffed with material, and so that it will make no difference. Now, a lot of people talk about having sinusitis when what they really have is nasal cavity drainage. I'm told sinusitis, Robert Salo says, is relatively rare. If you do have sinus infection, then you have to have the operative have it taken care of it. A lot of what we consider post-nasal drip kind of thing is from your sinuses, from your nasal cavity. Nasal cavity, of course, is a part of the respiratory tract. However, this sinus doesn't really add or do the maximaries to the resonance factor. This we're going to juxtapose in a moment to a very important slide. Here is the hard palate. Here is the soft palate terminating in the uvula. As you notice, this is now an open port. That would mean that there would be sound coming through the nose as well. You have elevation. Tongue, of course, is here. Nose is out here. Now, we're going to juxtapose that to two other slides. This is a nasal slide, a nasal sound. It's probably the sound because there's practically no emergence of the sound through the mouth. It's only going through the nose. This is a cartilaginous pillar here. These aren't two separate rooms. The sound is going through there. This is simply a cartilaginous pillar that supports the velar area. Back here is what is called passivence ridge. This is a bony structure. You cannot pull this back and forth. Now you're going to see with Dr. Teacher's films tonight some activity in the back of the wall, of the throat wall, which does indeed mean there's some space possible there. But there is not, you don't raise this and make a dome here, and so forth. This is what happens when you breathe through, if you breathe through your nose, or breathe with freedom. Here's the hard palate, here's the soft palate, and here's this little dimpling effect. That's what the palate can do and close here. It's not going to go up here somewhere. It's not going to go up here somewhere. You're going to see space. It's going to be back in here. You don't do something up here, making a dome and raising the veil and folding it up. That has very little to do with actual physiology. It has to do with changing the structure so that you get air mixtures all the time. This is very important picture for us, I think, and I will perhaps return to it another time. This again is another baritone, and he, you can tell, is singing leader. All right, I think that's the end of that slide. You want to change the voice is an acoustic instrument and obeys the laws of acoustics, or should. There can be variations of the main route, but if you get off going to the left or to the right, or too many things, you're in trouble. As you know, this is from Bill Bernard's important book. We're talks sometime about it. His science and his acoustics are excellent. I don't always agree with his pedagogy. If I do this on this piano, you hear a relatively resonant sound because the harmonic spectra is being involved. If I pull down the G, like this, and play this note, you hear a pitch. If I hold down the A flat, play that, you don't, because that's not part of that harmonic system. And so we have, it's not an integer of this fundamental pitch. And so as you know, in the harmonic system, we have this buildup. What's very interesting is, of course, on this piano, you can't get noise elements because the instrument won't do it. But the human voice, you can get noise elements. You can get things between these harmonics that you don't want, like that's all noise elements in the voice. It has nothing to do with the spectrum itself, with the fundamental and its overtones. So we're talking about a series of overtones here. The voice is very rich in overtones. For example, an instrument like the flute is not. It has many fewer. As I'm talking right now, as I change my voice back and forth, it probably goes from about 24 to 18 or whatever harmonics in the voice. So the human voice is a very rich in its harmonic spectrum. This is simply a schematic to show the same things, that when we have a vowel sequence, when we say ooh, we have a great deal of activity in the lower part of the spectrum, as you can see related to the keyboard. And then less in the upper part with some. O, you have a moving toward the middle. Ah, of course, is very strong in this area. A, you have a lot of activity in the lower part and the upper part, and E as well. So you can see there's a certain sequence going on here, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, up here are the vocal tract shapes based on X-ray. This is from Lauderfogel's very important little book on acoustics in the speaking and singing voice. And as you can see, here's the E vowel. Now, if you look at it, you can see that there's a relatively small amount of mouth resonance and a great deal of pharyngeal resonance. Then what happens when we come down the scale? E, A, and then Ah. Of course, the mouth now becomes the chief resonator and the pharynx is diminished. And Ah, O, Oo. Now let's talk a moment about this, and I'll show you this. I'll move ahead right away, then come back to it. These are based on speech, not on singing. You have he, hid, had, had. You notice as I say that, the pitch tends to fall unless I raise it. You probably all knew kids when you were a kid who could play tunes like this. And if you have a big larynx, you can hit your larynx there. Because each of these shapes has its own acoustic characteristic. E, of course, then, if we will notice here, we have a spectral envelope, this is called. Now, this means these are in hertz. That means, of course, that when we play a note on the piano, or when we sing it, we're not only hearing that fundamental, but a series of overtones. And so the overtones are very strong in the E vowel, roughly a little bit below 1,000. This is a male voice, and 2,000 and 3,000 here. Now, when you come to hid, you notice that there begins to be a fall off. There's not as much activity here. That's why the pitch seems to be lower. Head, the same thing. Had is very interesting. It's a very useful pedagogical vowel because it has an equal amount of activity of acoustic peaking at 1,000 hertz, 2,000 hertz, and 3,000 hertz. Now we'll go back to the first slide again. And that was this series right here. Those are the front vowels. Here are the back vowels. There are others, but this is basically the cardinal ones. And as you notice, when you go to Ah, there's a tremendous fall off in the third formant area. This, by the way, we call this first formant, second formant, third formant. A formant is where the energy peaks, where the acoustic energy peaks in the scale. And so we have this ah in the speaking voice. Now, if you notice, however, down here is the sun ah. It's the same vowel, and this was on this pitch. I wish we had something to put this on so that do all that. That's this. Then you simply push a button on the spectrum analysis machine, and you get the overtone relationship. fundamental. And then, of course, a strong peaking in this area. This, by the way, is, as you can see here, is frequency. And so you can see that there's a lot of energy in the lower part of the spectrum and in the upper part of the spectrum. These are hertz, 1,000 hertz, 2,000 hertz, 3,000 hertz. All, of course, does not have much in the middle. But now if you notice up here, this was the spoken awe, and nothing much happened up here. In fact, not enough to register. However, in the sun voice, you keep an equal amount of acoustic strength in both areas, both the lower part of the spectrum and the upper. And this, we did quite a bit of research in Holland. Hans K. Schutte, who's a very wonderful researcher, and I did this with Dr. Jan Willem van den Berg, his name is really van den Berg, or van den Berg, a number of years ago, and we sort of determined, and I think it's generally accepted, that if you are within a 10 dB relationship of this and this, you have what we call the chiaro-scuro tone. This is the oscuro, the dark, this is the chiaro. If I sing, oh, is it dark or is it light? Well, it's both. If it has both the depth and the height. Everything from 2000 on down is what tends to give the depth of the voice. Everything from 2000 on up is what tends to give the brilliance of the voice. This we often call the velvet, or the depth of the sound. This, the ping, the ring, the focus, as people say. And that's what the explanation is acoustically. And so you can see that in the singing voice, something happens that does not happen in the speaking voice. So E, 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 A, O, U. We have a changing of harmonic posture. This is on the back vowel. Here is the Had. This is the A sound. Fall off from the 3000. I'm sorry, that's had. No, that's Had. This is Hod. That's Ha. That's the A vowel, yes. A, U, and U. That's why it's very hard for singers to keep upper partial in the back vowel. Look how many times your student will say, the aw vowel falls back. You hear that over and over. Well, what is the falling back? It's that inherently in the vowel itself, there's not acoustic strength in that part of the spectrum. Here's another schematic spectra showing us what happens with the nasals. I mentioned this morning that the M is very useful in making us aware of the appoggio position. It's also very good as a resonance balancer for this reason, that you have a lot of acoustic strength in the area 1000, and somewhere in the 2000, 3000 area, and you have more strength again. So you have the M, already induces much of what we want. As Ingo Tietze has written, he says, the M, we sort of fool the vocal tract into feeling and the ear into hearing the resonance, and then when we go to the vowel, we keep the same resonance there. So that's why many times in voice studios and among teachers of singing, you hear much concentration on the nasal sounds. And you hear ma and so forth. As a matter of fact, the parody of a voice teacher is that he or she is always doing mi, me, ma, mo, mu. It's time for a pedagogical story before you break. For this, you have to take yourselves to the theater, let's say in Milano. I did it. See how clever I'm getting? And you have to pretend that you are at the period of time when telegrams were delivered directly to theaters. And the tenor is, the La Scala tenor is in his dressing room. He receives the telegram and he opens it and he says, mamma mia, and Marta. You go north to Düsseldorf or Stuttgart or maybe Wuppertal, and the telegram is delivered and he says, Schmidt is tot. And there you have the two main schools of bravo. How about an 8-minute break? Be there in a moment. Positions here. And this is the neutral position in which the tongue is in contact with the inner surface of the lower front teeth, as it is when you say E, E, A, A, O, U. Then, of course, here we have a series of the front vowels showing you where the relative positions are. When you say and the neutral positions are here for the us. And then the back vowels, of course, as I said before, the tongue is elevated in the back part of the mouth so that the buccopharyngeal chamber has a different shape. As I mentioned before, it's not the absolute dimension of either the mouth or the pharynx which is of importance, but the manner by which they are conjoined. And they are differently conjoined on all of the vowels. This is a tenor who is having a tongue problem. We'll talk a bit about the singer's format very quickly, and we'll be coming back to this many, many times. So if it is not totally clear to you at this moment, it will as the week goes by. First of all, this is a spectrum analysis. Here we have this axis is the time axis, and this axis is the frequency axis. Down here is the fundamental. We can tell what pitch that is because we have here designated 0, 500, 1,000, etc. in increments of 500 in the Hertz accumulation there. And so, as you can see, the fundamental is not the strongest harmonic. You'll also notice that when we say E, and this is the singing voice, this was written A440, but sung in the tenor voice at, oh, my helpers are so good here, they got that all song for me. If I do this, it's written A440, but of course it's 220 male voice, so it's E, A, A, O, U. You notice even here in this particular phonation, the U did not remain with the same kind of strength as did the others, and it should have. However, what we want to mention to you is that the little squiggle that you see there, of course, is the vibrato rate, because the vibrato is a pitch variant, and although we perceive it as timbre, it is a pitch variant. You can see that just as we saw in the other series, the latifogal pictures of the vocal tract, that you have a lot of acoustic strength here in this area, which is the 3,000 hertz area in the male voice, and you have it continuing here in the singing voice. However, in the speaking voice, you would see that this is the first formant, the second, and the third. You would see that the second formant begins to lower as you go from E to A to A to O to U, and you hear that something happens. Vowel sequential in the vowel definition of the voice, and that's basically what happens in the speaking voice. It's not really true. There is some also singer's format. If you say I do, you already have singer's format. Here is a very interesting slide for this reason. That we have here, remember, this is the time axis, this is the hertz axis. That means that when you're perceiving this 220 pitch, written A440, you're not only hearing A440 as you would with a tuning fork, but you're hearing a complex sound, which comes from a series of overtones or of upper partials. And where those peak, we call them formants. So this we see here already, something up here of strength, very much strength, in the upper part of the spectrum, and that's what we call the singer's format, which stays throughout. However, this is a very interesting phonation because we put it on for a specific reason. This was this, and it is about the way it happened. We have this, we have here, E, this is what happened. E, A, A, that's nasality. E, A, A, O, this is what happened. O. Now, this is very important for us as singers. Fundamental pitch stays the same, but it sounds like it's flatting here if we lose the upper partial. This sounds like this was too much sound, too much noisy sound at the top of the spectrum. There should be a ceiling on this, roughly in the male voice of about, with tenors about 3,500, baritones about 3,000, sopranos around 4,000. Much activity above that is largely noise elements in the voice. This is a noise element. What I wanted was then this will stay the same and the pitch will stay the same. So there are many advantages to using spectrum analysis, and we'll be talking about that. I'll hurry through this a bit so we get be on time for our masterclass, and then we'll come back to it another time. All right, this, which looks like the Roman Colosseum, is supposed to happen because there is no activity, should not be an activity, in this area on the A vowel. And so you can see what happens is that the second formant is higher there, lower here, higher there, lower here, and that the third, fourth, and fifth formants stay very much in gear up there. So this is a sequence like this. This is a little higher, as you can see. No, I'm sorry. This is the fundamental down here, so it's the same pitch. The fundamental, of course, is very often not the strongest harmonic. In physics, I believe it's true that the fundamental is also called the first harmonic. We singers like to think of it a little differently, but these are indeed the overtone series you're seeing based on this fundamental pitch down here. So this is and what the singer can do is to be sure that all the A's match and all the A's match. They must look the same. If I do I have a whole lot of transition sound in there that I don't want. So it's very useful for a singer to see whether or not the clarity of the vowel is present. Here is a sequence of E-A-O, 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 E-A-O. And of course, while we're hearing only this pitch, these are the overtones. And of course, they vary depending on what the vowel postures are, and that's determined by the shape of the vocal tract, largely by the position of the tongue. The tongue is high in a forward position on the front vowels, and then the tongue is elevated. The body of the tongue is elevated to the back of the mouth for the so-called back vowels. And the front vowels should be called close vowels because the tongue is close to the palate, to the hard palate, and then the back vowels are because the tongue is elevated to the back. I prefer to use the terminology lateral and rounded because I don't like singers to think of putting things front and back. This young lady has been watching her mother sing, and so she's... all right, I think we'll now stop with this and go to...